Hello, and welcome to Around the Political World with John Rothman. I am your host, John Rothman. If you're a fan of the show, make sure to hit the follow button on the top right of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening at this very moment. When you hit follow, leave a review or share an episode with a friend. It helps other people discover the show, keeps us going, and as I like to remind you each and every day, it expands our base. Last night, CNN did a special called America First. Fareed Zakaria put it together, and frankly, it was a fantastic hour because it reminded us all that with 15 days to go before we go to the polls, foreign policy has not been debated in this campaign. And yet it should be. Our Secretary of State is in the Middle East at this very moment. Our Secretary of Defense is in Ukraine at this very moment. And at this very moment, we in the United States face a choice between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. And they are very different when it comes to foreign policy. I've reminded you in the past of my conversations with Richard Nixon, and one of the things that Mr. Nixon said to me was, a president spends 70% of his, or in this case her time, on foreign policy. And yet, we have had virtually no discussion about foreign policy during this campaign. Well, let's be clear. As Secretary Austin has explained in clear and precise language, he is going to Ukraine because America has a commitment to Ukrainian independence. He believes, and the administration believes, that support for Ukraine is critical. Let me point out to you that J.D. Vance, the Republican nominee for vice president, is opposed to aid to Ukraine and has voted against that aid in the Senate over the last several years. And of course, we also know that Donald Trump has expressed grave doubts about Ukraine, saying if he is elected president, before he even takes office as president-elect, he will solve the problem of Ukraine. That makes a lot of people very nervous, including Vladimir Zelensky, the president of Ukraine. This question of American involvement also affects our NATO alliance. Remember that the NATO alliance was established when Harry Truman was president, but the first commander of NATO was Dwight Eisenhower. And as I've reminded you on several podcasts, and which Fareed Zakaria emphasized last night, Dwight Eisenhower got into the presidential race because Bob Taft, the leading Republican candidate, refused to tell him that he would go along with NATO. Taft was an isolationist. He represented that wing of the Republican Party. And so Eisenhower ran in order to make sure that NATO, and remember he was Supreme Allied Commander, the first one, maintained what it needed to do in order to protect Western Europe. This question of American involvement in Ukraine is one of decisive importance to our allies, to Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, to Poland, to Eastern Europe. And so there has been no discussion, there has been no debate, but there ought to be. And of course, Secretary Blinken is now in the Middle East. He has gone to the Middle East repeatedly in order to try to come to some conclusion on a ceasefire and a return of the hostages. The prospects of his success are dimmed, mainly because Hamas is not interested in returning hostages and is not interested in a ceasefire. Even with the death of the Hamas leader, it doesn't seem to matter to them, nor does it matter how many of their people, Palestinians, die in the process. And so foreign policy, which should be front and center, is not. Once upon a time, the Republican Party made a decision. It was in 1940 when they nominated Wendell Willkie for president, and the keynoter of the convention was Governor Harold Stassen of Minnesota. And one of the leading advocates, ultimately, for Republican involvement in the world was Arthur Vandenberg, who became the architect of bipartisan foreign policy. It was those three Republicans who powered the Republican Party into internationalism, and Dwight Eisenhower and his successors, Democratic and Republican, who made sure that we were part of the world. Donald Trump seems to want to lead us in a different direction, away from direct involvement. And that, to me, should be of great concern. The time for action is now. We must be involved in the world. If we withdraw from the world, if as Donald Trump has indicated, he might withdraw from NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, well, essentially, America would be abdicating its role in the world. And make no mistake, our role in the world is critical. We have a place that is so vital in determining the future of humankind. Let us remember that the United States triumphed in the Cold War without firing a shot, that in the end it was our economic power which brought the Soviet Union to extinction. We still have that economic power if we choose to use it. Donald Trump speaks of tariffs, and I want to point out to you the last time tariffs played a central role in an American presidential campaign was in 1892. That's right. That's how far back you have to go for the tariff question to be center in a campaign. Most Americans don't understand tariffs, but one thing is clear. Donald Trump favors a high tariff, and Kamala Harris does not. This is a traditional role of the Republicans, who always favored a high tariff, while Democrats favored a lower tariff, which frankly benefits more people. These foreign policy questions ought to be hammered out, ought to be discussed, ought to be part of the lexicon of this campaign. But clearly, well, we'd rather see Donald Trump making French fries at McDonald's and Kamala Harris celebrating her 60th birthday than dealing with the substantive issues of foreign policy. We have a role in the world, and it's a vital role. And if America steps back from that role, the world will be in jeopardy. We live in a far better place because of American involvement. When I go to the polls on November 5th, I'm going to think carefully about the contrast between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. Foreign policy, if we care, should be a vital issue in this campaign. Thanks for turning yourselves to another episode of Around the Political World with John Rothman. Make sure to follow along and let me know your thoughts on the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and sharing an episode with a friend or colleague so we can continue to grow and expand. That is, of course, you can interact with me on LinkedIn and Facebook, and some of you are emailing me on a regular basis, for which I am very grateful. Let me thank Gogo Zoger, the wonderful producer of this program. We'll be back tomorrow, and who knows where the world will be, but I know where you and I will be, right here on Around the Political World with John Rothman. See you then. Around the Political World with John Rothman is proud to introduce our first sponsor. That's right. We have someone who loves what we do, and I have to tell you, I love what she does. Be Bold America is produced by KSQD, and of course, the person who leads us through these great discussions is none other than Jill Cody. She's an author, a radio personality, and she does one heck of a job of putting into focus major issues, from protecting democracy to our climate. Let me tell you, the topics on the podcast are serious. It's not for the faint of heart, but that's to say the show is for all of us. Be bold in America. In an election year, what can we do to increase discussion, debate, and the rest? I'll tell you what we can do. Listen to Jill Cody as she exposes all of us to the issues. You can tune in on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever else you like to get your shows. So this is John Rothman, delighted, pleased, thrilled to endorse Jill Cody's wonderful program, Be Bold, America.